So we're here with Jamie Paolinetti. He obviously rides for his road team, Monster Media, powered by MRI. And we just want to have a conversation with him. So I just want to get right to the good stuff. What are your accomplishments in your discipline? Because I know you've been around cycling for 30 years probably.
Yeah, 1986 was when I started, so 25, 26 years. I've always been a road racer, criterium racer, you know, never really rode the track, never really raced mountain bikes, so just strictly my focus has been on the road as a professional bike racer. That's what I wanted to do, really from the first couple months that I started racing. I wanted to be a professional bike racer. So that's kind of the area that I went into. Look at my career in kind of eras, because I've had a number of breaks in between. But I started in 1986 and immediately was a Category 2. I've told this story I think a couple of times. At that time there were no Category 5s, just 4, 3, 2, 1, and then professional. So my first 4 races as a Category 4, I got second every race. Second, and every time something went wrong. Like once I pulled my foot out of the pedal, once there was a guy off the front that I didn't know about and I won the field sprint. You know, another time, I think, I don't know, I blew a shift because the shifting wasn't what it is now. Anyway, I got 4 seconds in a row, and that was enough to move me up then. Huh. And so I just immediately was a Cat 3, and I'd been on a road bike less than 2 months. I had just started riding my bike. I played baseball and football growing up, so I never even knew what cycling was until it got introduced to me by a friend. And then as soon as I turned Cat 3, I won the next 4 races that I entered in a row. So that was going to be close to being enough to move me up to be a Cat 2, but it happened that it fell right during the district championships. Was going to be my next race, which would have been my 9th race, I think, on the bike. And so I did districts, and districts at the time was all of California, all of Nevada, some of Arizona. There were about 400 guys in the race. And I think I was 12th or something. And then that immediately made me a Cat 2. And so I'd been on the bike 9 weeks and was a Category 2 rider. So I kind of knew right away that I was going to be able to do that, to race my bike. At what level, I wasn't sure because I knew nothing about the sport, and keep in mind this is 1986. It's not really...
So you moved up fast?
Yeah, 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, I talk about that a lot to young riders, that we can put anybody in the lab now. Then there wasn't a lab. But we can put anybody in the lab now and kind of test the size of their motor versus the size of their vehicle, and if your motor's not big enough to make the vehicle go fast enough, you're never going to be a pro. It's just how it is.
Got it.
Yeah.
So when you became a pro,
Yeah.
what level of pro did you make it to? I know there's different levels in this sport.
Yeah, so that was, like I said, I started in 86, in the middle of the year. 1987, I got a ride on a good local team that basically paid for everything. And I did over 100 race days that year in 1987. So 87 and 88, I was on a really good local, regional, what would be a Cat 1-2 team now. And then at the end of 88, I got a pro contract. So 2 years on the bike, and I turned pro.
With what team?
It was American Commerce, and Paul Abrams' father, Pablo, was the director of that team. He ran that team. It was his team. It's called American Commerce, sponsored by a bank. And that's when I met Paul, who runs Cash Call now, when he was just a little kid, basically. And his dad gave me my first pro contract.
Just quickly name off the teams that you've rode for.
Right. I was on American Commerce a couple years. And then there's a team called the Chevrolet LA Sheriffs. And at the time, it was a club, a really big club. And the guy that was running it, Greg Christopherson, went to Jeff Pierce, of 7-Eleven fame, who had done 5 Tour de France's. Jeff won the final stage on the Champs-Elysees in front of 1 million people in the Tour de France, and I think it was '87. And Jeff was kind of done with the European thing and wanted to come back and race domestically. So Greg Christopherson and Jeff Pierce were trying to put together a pro team. And then Jeff came to me and said, hey, I want you on this team. And Greg had known me as well. And so Jeff Pierce and I were the first really 2 guys on the Chevrolet LA Sheriff's pro team. That team would end up being one of the dynasties of the sport in the early 90s and go all the way to 1995, I think. So that was the team I was on from that point.
It was a big run.
It was a big run, yeah. Big run, wins 70, 80 races a year.
Wow.
You know, again, one of the few kind of dynasties, if I think back all the way to the late 80s when cycling started in this sport, there have been a few teams like that. Our team, Saturn.
Is that the best team you've ever been on?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, again, we're winning stages of the Tour du Pont, leader's jersey in the Tour du Pont, which is like what the Tour of California is now. And then also winning U.S. Pro Championships, U.S. Pro Criterium Championships. We won Redlands 3 years in a row. I mean, the team was a powerhouse team. Yeah.
What stopped you from going to an intercontinental team?
It was 2 things. One, I was really happy on the Chevy team. You know, domestic racing then, if you had a big team, was really hot. I mean, we had a full race schedule from February to October, where we would go to these just great event after great event after great event after great event, talking international stage races, big one-day races, fantastic, huge criteriums. It was to the point where we couldn't even go to all the races that we were invited to. So I was, one, really happy with the domestic scene. I had been to Europe as an amateur and seen what was going on over there, and for an American to go to Europe.
Is there one that stands out?
I think there are a couple things that stand out. Later, you know, after I retired in 1995, and I didn't race for a couple of years, and then I ended up coming back to the sport and starting what would be the Net Zero team that the movie The Hard Road is about. And then I turned pro again, you know, after taking a number of years off and just racing locally, and then we built this team, the Net Zero team. That took a couple of years. And so when I came back and started racing at that level again, I won a race called the Shelby Criterium, which was kind of akin to Dana Point, actually, you know, maybe even a little bigger than Dana Point. It was one of the biggest criteriums in the country. And I went there with a small team. Basically, our Net Zero team was small. There's only 5 of us: myself, Graham Miller, Michael Johnson, Hilton Clark, who now is UHC, and Jason Bausch. And so at that time, we hadn't won a really big event yet, and that was a kind of breakthrough for our team. And then we ended up winning the Athens Criterium the next night. So 2 days in a row, we won the 2 biggest criteriums in the country. So that Shelby race stands out for me because of that reason, going to a bigger NRC race on an underdog team with only 5 guys, and I won solo. So
can you tell us all what those bands on your arm mean, the red, white, and blue, and the stars? Can you tell us that? So
yeah,
we all know?
that's, if you win a national championship ever in your life as a cyclist, for the rest of your career, you get to wear bands on your arms, and some teams have them on their legs as well. Same with if you win a world championship, you'll see guys like Boonen, you know, they have the rainbow on their sleeves.
And what year did you win that?
This is actually from 2 years ago, I believe, because this is a Masters team, so these are Masters bands. That was 2010, I believe, that I won the national championship. Yeah.
That's great. How old are you?
I'm now 49. Just turned 49.
How do you do it? I mean, at the level you guys are riding at, I mean, I saw you in the pro criterium at Dana Point, and that was one of the fastest criteriums I've ever seen out there this last year in 2012. So how do you keep your body balanced, your mind balanced to do those kind of races?
Well, I think a lot of it's experience, to tell you the truth. I'm a big believer in muscle memory as well, and I have so many miles in my legs and in my body that as long as I stay pretty much at the same weight, don't get sick, my body can still make the horsepower necessary to go those speeds. I can't do it as long or as often, but I can still do it. And then the experience, you know, you mentioned Dana Point, which is the best race we have going now, I believe. That's a lot of tactical and technical ability to be able to ride that race, and experienced guys have that.
How do you warm up for a race?
Well, there's a little trick I'm going to tell everybody. Our bodies work in cycles, right? They turn on, they turn off, they get used to doing things, and then they get used to doing other things. And so whenever I am going to do an event, I always do a little short ride in the morning to kind of trick my body into going into an active cycle instead of waiting until I get to the event and then trying to warm up then. And it's just a thing that I saw some of the pros doing when I first started, and I thought, well, we race at 2 o'clock. Why is this guy riding at 8 a.m. for 45 minutes easy? And then I saw every single pro that I've ever known do that, and I thought, well, there's got to be something to it. And I don't know the science behind it, I just know that it works.
Well, what is the key when you're in a break to making it stick?
There are a number of things. First, it has to be the combination, has to be right, depending on who's in the race. You know, what teams can dictate what happens in this race. There's usually only 2 or 3. And are those teams happy with the breakaway? If they're not, the break isn't going to work. And or if they're out of gas, then the break has a chance. But typically teams like that don't run out of gas. And so the combination has to be right. That's the first thing. And then you need guys that are committed to taking it to the line, because even one guy in a breakaway that starts sitting on is going to upset the flow, and then somebody else is going to not want to work 100%. And breakaways that work, you need a group of guys committed 100% to getting to the line and then working out who's going to win.
That's a good answer. Do you ever attack the break when you're in the break?
Every time. Yeah, I mean, that's how I win races. I will never ever let a breakaway go to the line if it's up to me. It's just not, doesn't play to my strengths. Even if I think I'm the fastest guy in the break, I still won't let it go to the line. It's too unpredictable. You know, whenever I start a race for my team, I want a scenario where we're going to have 100% guaranteed victory. And so we will manipulate the race over and over and over until I feel like, okay, we have 100% certainty of the win now, or 99, or 98, or 97. And that becomes a sliding scale as the race goes forward and the variables start playing into the event, where, well, now you have to settle for 90% or 80% or 70 or 60 or 50, which you never want, but it happens. So to answer your question, I'm always going to attack the break, eventually.
I love that answer. I think more people need to do that.
Look, you have to risk losing to win.
What piece of advice can you give younger guys that are going to be watching this?
Like I said, if it's somebody that, well, it doesn't matter. Whatever their level of physical ability, bike racing is a tactical, mental sport. Everybody enters the event with the tools they have, but the guy with the most horsepower doesn't always win. In fact, he most often doesn't win. And so that's what's unique about our sport. We're not doing triathlons. We're not doing marathons. This is a team-oriented, tactically driven sport where a guy like me at 49 years old can beat a national level pro on any day if he makes a mistake.
You guys are all a great bunch of guys, and you're very approachable, and you're very kind for coming here and doing this, and we'd like to thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure everybody's going to be really excited about this.
Well, thanks.